welcome to the first episode of a thing I bought. Hey, guess what? Here's a thing I bought. ColUSB. Let's check it out. This is the ColUSB, which is to say it's a power supply adapter for the ColecoVision. Now, I do have to acknowledge that there are already a couple of very good YouTube reviews by both Arcade USA and Glenn's Retro Show. But I figured it couldn't hurt to add my voice, given how little coverage this thing has otherwise gotten. I should also say I'm still a bit of a ColecoVision neophyte, since I never really had one as a youth, and but there's no denying it's a very handsome-looking machine, and it's very interesting because it represents the first time in the industry that there was a new console generation, and it's sort of one that would ultimately be dominated by Nintendo's NES. As for why such a adapter would even be necessary, you just need to look at the original ColecoVision adapter supply, the power supply. This thing is literally larger than your fist. And I think even at the time it was kind of baffling to look at. I mean, just finding a place to plug this thing in could be a challenge. And but it's also very unreliable. It's just every problem I've ever had getting my ColecoVision working has basically related to the power supply in some way. But let's look at the ColUSB a little bit more closely. There's no denying at the front it's a bit of a pricey item, but I think the quality is undeniable. The instruction manual is nice, and I'm actually glad I read it, since it gave a very useful tip about not simply leaving it plugged in all the time when you're not using it, which I was totally going to do. It's USB, but it does get a bit warm, no doubt about it. So don't burn it out when you're not using it. Just use it like you normally would. So here's the thing itself. It's a very nice bit of engineering. I think it might be 3D printed. It feels very light, but it's very solid. I mean, everything connects very, very well. Here's the USB-C cord and charger that I got separately for it. It doesn't come with any of this. So you'll need like a USB-C cord and a charger with at least 2 amps. The ones I got here were actually very cheap. The cord was a 6-foot braided cable. I got a Five Below. And the charger is one I got at Walmart for about the same price, $5, which is rated for 2.4 amps. And they both work fine, it seems to me. Anyway, so here's the whole assembly side by side with the original charger that it's replacing. It's a pretty amazing difference in size. But let's actually plug this all in and see how it works. Okay, we got the charger plugged into the power. We got our TV on. The adapter is plugged into the ColecoVision. And now, like a magic trick, switch on, and we got picture. So let me set this thing up, and let's actually play a few games and see how this thing works out. All right, so we're going to start with Donkey Kong, because that's probably one of the first experiences, well, certainly one of the first experiences I had with seeing the system for the first time. I'm going to go for skill level 2, because I'm not a scrub. So the picture, I mean, normally I would play this on a CRT, and I guess the only reason I'm not is because it's a little bit easier to take video in my setup with can't get it with my LCD. But I mean, the picture is solid. It all sounds good. It looks good. Again, this is all being powered off the USB-C. It's a very regular charger. Oh, that sucks. So I'm not seeing any, instability with the picture. And that's the important thing, because I think when stuff would go wrong with the power supply, you'd always sort of tell. Well, the other thing too, can just be loose video connection sometimes, is what I've experienced, but it's usually one of the two. Like getting this thing started was always a pain in the butt, because I'd have to get contact cleaner out and clean the contacts on the power supply, the contact for the brick and the on the pins on the ColecoVision. Every single time I pulled this thing out of storage, I'd have to do that to get it working. This thing worked the first time I plugged in the new connector. So the fact it's just so much smaller and lighter. You can see from the way I had my plug set up that getting the regular ColecoVision power supply would be a nightmare. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to start up. Let's do another game really quickly, just to prove this is not a fluke. All right, Venture, probably my single favorite ColecoVision game. Because it was really so close to the arcade version, which at the time was definitely one of my favorite arcade games as well. It had the trappings of AD&D, the kind of, you know, but it was also a really interesting action game that it felt like one of the first games of its type where it felt like there was progression. Like you think about the typical shooter at the time where there was like Space Invaders, Asteroids, Galaga. The sense of progression wasn't as strong because it was always the same star field, same enemies for the most part, a lot of the same patterns. You know, we get harder by going faster, but in this game you felt like you were getting somewhere. The rooms were different, the enemies were different. And this conversion really pulled it off really well, I think. Especially with all the music and everything. Oh, don't kill me, come on. I guess you could say the only thing that it didn't do in this version is the way the enemies would decay. Yeah, level complete. And again, the picture's completely solid, completely playable. And I'm going to skip over to one last game, which I think was the pack-in game, which is the Cosmic Avenger. Let's do that real quick, and then we'll get you home. All right, Cosmic Avenger. This is sort of my impression was it was the pack-in game. Maybe it wasn't, because I never had the system, but I certainly saw this game quite a bit. It's sort of like a Scramble clone, and I feel like a lot of the arcade games that were on the ColecoVision were clones of other games to a certain extent. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I mean, like Slither was the Centipede clone. This was a Scramble clone. But they did have Frenzy. I mean, that was a real game. I got that Frenzy too. I was thinking about plugging that in, but I didn't want this video to be too long, so I'm basically just proving the point that it works. Yeah, so this is fun because, I mean, having the convenience and ease of that USB charger supply, I mean, it's just so much less of a pain in the butt to set the system up. So now I actually kind of want to get more games for this thing. I've got over a dozen. I don't know how many exactly I have, but I mean, I could think of a few that I could get that I would want. Like I don't have Donkey Kong Jr., for example. Certainly don't have any of the homebrews. I've always been reluctant to invest too much in the system because it always felt like it would fall apart at any moment. You know, it always has that sense. Even now, you know, but I think that little flicker on the screen, the video flicker, is probably either just the game itself, or it could just be my connection. I really should at some point open this thing up again and re-solidify some of the contacts, because I mean, I did the composite video mod on this like literally years ago, and I'm willing to bet it may have loosened up over time somewhat. I mean, it looks solid enough, but I just hate opening up the ColecoVision. It's a bit of a pain in the butt. But yeah, that's enough. That's good. That's cool. It works. What can you say about it? This thing works, and it's awesome, and it's an investment. I won't deny that. But I think it's justified by the sense that it's basically saved the system for me. Like I can now pull this out whenever I want and plug it in wherever I want, and I can just enjoy it the way I would any of my other classic systems. So it sort of paid for itself in that respect. It's definitely a lot for a simple adapter, but part of the reason for that is just because it's not a mass-produced thing. Yeah, so I'm going to bounce out of this, and we'll do one last word, and that'll be it. Thanks for watching. All right, that was the ColUSB. I'll have a link to the site in Germany that makes and sells these if you want to follow up on yourself and getting one. It's a bit pricey on its own. The shipping was actually pretty cheap and took less than 2 weeks to get to me, so cheers for that. And like I said, I think this thing pretty much saved the ColecoVision for me, and now I'm definitely thinking of adding more games to my collection because of it, so it's been totally worth it for me. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you the next time I buy a thing.